Terry Mosher, welcome to the Bookshelf Conversation.
It's nice of you to do this, Ron.
Oh, I mean, in the words of Yogi Berra, thank you for making this conversation necessary. So you've come out. It's not a brand new book, but it is a book on a topic that I'm very vested in. It's Aislin's Montreal Expos, a cartoonist's love affair. Came out last year, and it's a I would call it an informal history of the team populated by your drawings. Uh, Expos have been out of Montreal for a while, so what took you so long to come up with this?
Well, it occurred to me, I mean, with the 20th anniversary of the team leaving, and there was a lot of activity here in Montreal reflecting on that, a lot of nostalgia and so on. And I just decided, looking back on I've been cartooning for close to 60 years now. And so I was cartooning during the whole period that the Expos were in Montreal. And early on in my career with the newspaper, they knew my love of baseball. I'm actually a political cartoonist,
Mhm.
but as an antidote to all that political nonsense, I loved, attending baseball games and that sort of thing. And I would go to spring training and do sketchbooks for the newspaper. So those were very popular in the day. It occurred to me with the 20th anniversary coming up, why not do a reflective book? It's almost like a personal history
Mhm.
in cartoon and photographs and a lot of writing in it too, about my experience with the Expos. So this is not your usual uh, book, a sports book, if you will. It's not. Experiences I had. I got to know a lot of the ball players. Bill Lee, the spaceman, particularly. And I ran it by them. I said, "Would you cooperate with me on this?" They said, "We'd love to." Uh, so I got that permission, and then a number of other people in management to make sure. And I just wrote the damn thing. It was fun. It was an awful lot of fun to do, I must admit. I do a lot of books. This is my 55th book.
Wow.
Uh, the others primarily political material. Believe it or not, politics are actually interesting here in Canada.
Oh, they're interesting here too, but
Oh, they're
but in a
certainly
different
very,
way.
and you're providing me with a lot of material these days. Yeah.
Now, uh, I have to tell you that my family comes from Montreal,
Mhm.
and we would spend a lot of time visiting my aunt in the Outremont neighborhood. And I remember getting the Gazette delivered every day, and I remember seeing lots of your political cartoons and your sports, obviously, your Expos cartoons. My mother claims to have seen Jackie Robinson play in 1946. Now, where was that ballpark located? What section of town was that?
It was right downtown. It's called Delaudermier Downs, and it was a wonderful old-fashioned ballpark. I think the Montreal Royals first formed in the 1920s, I believe, and off and on. But Delaudermier, I forget when that was built, but it was a wonderful. And I went to that ballpark when I was a kid in the 50s,
Mhm.
and saw. I didn't see Jackie Robinson; he was earlier than that. But I saw Roy Campanella, Don Newcombe, all kinds of people play at that time. And so that sort of and I played Little League Baseball. So that solidified my love of the game. I wasn't the greatest baseball player, but I was very good at razzing players on the other team.
Bench jockey.
Well, that was, I guess, early form of cartooning, if you will. Uh,
Hmm.
and in any case, it was so I've always had this love. Also, partly grew up in Toronto, so I was a fan of the Toronto team too. Anyway, there you have it. Here's the thing. It's a very unique book in that I have, I'm popular here, as you know, and so I published the book myself as opposed to going to an establishment because I knew where my audience was.
Hmm.
Now, this is really quite something. I'm boasting a bit here. I decided to give uh, approximately 10% of the royalties to an organization that's raising money for a hospital here, a children's hospital. And I sold $200,000 worth of books, believe it or not, just in the Montreal area
I
surrounding
believe
area.
it. Absolutely.
And so $20,000 went to the hospital. It was
Nice.
a very good feeling to be able to do that. So I've been around long enough that I've got enough money so I can give some of it away.
Well, that's very, very commendable.
Yeah.
You write at one point in the book that you haven't drawn every expo that's played. The Mets, my team here, uh, in one of their yearbooks in the, I guess, late 70s, early 80s, put out a poster, tiny thumbnail shots of every single player at that who had played for the franchise at the time. And I'm thinking if you could collect those you have, and I'm sure you could do others from either photographs or memory and put that together in a book. I mean, that's something I would buy.
Over 600 players played for the Expos
Mhm.
during the years that they existed. And that would be a lot of drawing.
Yeah, but you've got it in the bank,
I've got a
most of
lot
them.
of it. That's true.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, you write about a couple of your favorite players, and it brought a lot of nostalgia to mind. Ron Brand, for example, was a
Oh,
member of the original team. He and John Bateman collaborated on, and I'm sorry I couldn't lay my hands on it in my library. It was an instructional book published in both English and French.
hmm.
It was mostly pictures on how to play the game, and I just thought it was at the time I bought it, it was brand new, and I was obviously much younger, and I was really impressed on it. The first major league player I ever saw in person was Mike Torres, and he just happened to be making an appearance in I'm either it was Simpson's or Eaton's department store. And I didn't know who he was because he was dressed as a civilian.
Hmm.
But he was the biggest person I ever saw at that time.
Yes, they are. They're being in the dressing room is a little scary because you have these guys horsing around and they're big as a mountain, and even the small guys are big. And yeah, it's quite something. I loved Ron Band. He's still alive. He's in Texas. I think he's doing some scouting for the Yankees.
Hmm.
And what a terrific guy. But there's a story about Ron and John Bateman, the two original catchers. They came from Houston in the draft to form the Expos in '69 or '68, I guess, the year before. And they both came from Texas, where they had been a tandem catching duo, but they were as different as night and day. Ron Brand is a Mormon, I'm sorry, a Mormon, and does good work. And when he came here, he began doing visiting schools and doing all kinds of things, going on caravans and tours to Quebec City with Rusty Staub. He traveled and he did a great deal for the team. John Bateman, on the other hand, was a bit of a carouser. He was an interesting guy. He came to Texas and he couldn't go back because he'd written a lot of bad checks there. And one of the most, you may remember this, one of the most historic events in our history here in Montreal was when the terrorists, the FLQ, kidnapped a diplomat. And huge, all around the world, there was focus on this. Bateman was drinking in a bar with a bunch of reporters when the news broke, and the reporters got a call from the newspaper, go up to such and such an address, and they've discovered some FLQ suspects, the terrorists. And they said to Bateman, John, come on along. So he got in the back of the car with all these guys, and the policemen were going up. It was a favorite bar in Montreal. And they arrived there, and of course, TV and photographs. Gene Mock, the team's manager, was in California at the time, watching all of this activity in Montreal. Curiosity about his time. It was pretty spectacular. And then he's watching, and who does he see but his starting catcher standing in the background, grinning away with all these policemen?
That's one of the
There,
great
there's
things about,
wonderful early stories about the Expos,
and
and
that's one of the great, you're going to say one of the great things about this book is it has those kinds of stories that you're not going to find in a more formal team history.
yeah.
You also at another point you mentioned another of your favorite players, Zach Day, who was a pitcher years later, and there's a photo of him making sketches. Now, you've been
Yeah.
around the team a long time. Is anybody else who stands out in your mind as being artistically gifted like that?
Yeah. Andres Galarrago is a painter.
Hmm.
And he came from Venezuela, of course, and he got here and he didn't speak any English at the time or very little, and he asked the PR department, where can I find art supplies? So they called me.
Hmm.
So I took another big guy, Andres
Uh-huh.
Galarraga,
Yeah.
down to the best art supply store, and he was like a kid in a candy shop. It was wonderful to see him checking out all these great North American supplies, and he was very, very happy about that. So again, that's an inside joke. The caricature of Galarraga I did has him holding a glove because he's a great fielder and grinning away, but also holding a palette with a paintbrush, you know.
Mhm.
So a lot of inside stories like that were a lot of fun to put together.
And anyone else you can think of besides? I met him in 2003. I was up for the Expos last homestand of the year, working on a project. We thought they were going to be contracted along with the Minnesota Twins. That was a brilliant plan Major League Baseball had because they weren't drawing very well. Uh, And Galarraga was one of the people I met in the locker room, and I was brand new at this, and I was like you, early on intimidated by being around ball players in that environment. And I was looking for someone to chat with, and I went over to him for some reason, and he didn't speak well, but I knew that he painted. I'm sorry, excuse me,
Well, you
and
know that, yeah.
I knew that, and he was when I mentioned it to him, that perked him up a little bit, being recognized for that. So we did have a little bit of a conversation about that. Other players, I mean, Rusty Staub goes without saying, was probably the most popular player in Expos history, even though he wasn't with the team all that long.
Yeah, well, that happens. Bill Lee was only here for 2 years, but he is also right up in the top five of the most popular players. He was such a character, and as you know, Montreal's an interesting city where they love characters,
Mhm.
and so Bill still comes back all the time here and is very, very popular. One other artistic fellow, and few people know that, Jim Fanning,
Mhm.
who was with the original management team and was the team, I guess, for 20 years or so. And he was my gateway to getting a lot of things done. Because when I went to spring training, I sat in the stands. He came and he found me because he knew who I was as a cartoonist. And he said, "Can I sit with you?" I said, "Yeah, sure, great." He said, he was a catcher and not an important major league catcher, but he always wanted to be a cartoonist. So for the first 20 years, he was able to get me into corners, nooks and crannies that other people weren't allowed to into. So he became a good friend also. I like Jim.
Do you teach drawing?
I have on occasion, but I love to draw so much. I've just devoted most of my life to that. And there are very few people who have that inclination. You know, there are watercolorists, wonderful artists around. But what I do is very specific. There's so very few of us that that's been sort of my full-time job since the beginning. Just as well, too. My mother was so glad when I got an actual job cartooning. She said, I was convinced you'd end up in jail because I was such a rascal. But I found an outlet for the rascality, if you will,
Mhm.
in just doing this to politicians. It's wonderful.
What is your process? How do you go about coming up? I'm sure you get this as a cliche to ask writers and artists, where do you come up with your ideas? But where do you come up with your ideas?
Well, I suppose if I knew I could bottle it and sell it, the business of this applies to any creative person. How does, I kind of sit, the Japanese have an expression, wonderful expression, sit, wait, watch, and something will happen. And that's basically what I do. I consume news. I consume 5 or 6 newspapers a day. Canadian, Quebec newspapers, but also international. I still read newspapers online, of course, and
Mhm.
I watch a lot of television, and I just wait for it to come. And often it's a situation where you take one. We've got an election going on here right now in Canada. There's the Trump business, which is, and then there's the last hockey game of the year. So I combined all of three of those into one cartoon. A guy watching a television, trying to decide what he actually wanted to watch. And the last item was it was hockey players for each other, and the last one is Trump versus the whole world.
Hmm.
So it's a process that happens by my wife. If I'm at a party with my wife and I suddenly go silent, she will say, "It's okay, he's working."
So you never know when the inspiration is going to hit.
Yes, but you must know a lot of writers and so on. It's the same with them. It's always a sort of like a pinball machine in your brain going with the balls going around and around and they drop into place and so on. That's about all I can tell you really, because to explain a process of or how it even happens, I'm not sure, but it does. Thankfully, it still does after 60 years.
Well, one of the things in talking with authors, I ask them when do they know that they're finished? When are you satisfied with the drawing? How do you know that this is it?
When do you need it?
I guess that plays a part in it.
The
Yeah.
deadline's huge. I mean, I know people who draw beautifully, but they have to take days to think about it and so on. My dad, thankfully, was a journalist, and I saw him the process. If you get the damn thing done, get it done, get it done. I had the typewriter, those wonderful old typewriters with all the clacking. And so I grew up seeing him meeting deadlines for magazines and this, that, and the other. And he said, your talent is important, but you've got to meet the deadline in this business or you're dead. So,
I guess that's more true for journalists, people who work for newspapers, and people who just, and I don't mean this pejoratively, just write books, who have a little more
yeah.
time to work with their project. So, for example, is that behind you? Is that Sosa with the 60?
Let me see. It's Sosa. Is Sosa there?
Is that the 60/40 in the bottom row next to the jar of vitamins?
I have to turn around here, and it's a bit of a tight squeeze.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't think it's Sosa. I don't think I have the board.
Oh, okay.
Ross, here, let me give you an example of
Oh, is
this.
that Ross Grimsley then?
Ross Crum is over my shoulder with all the hair.
Okay,
Okay, let me tell you a story about this.
please.
He was, he won the only player to win 20 games for the Expos, and he threw about 30 miles an hour. He was just such a good junk pitcher, and I remember teasing him about him at the time. So he has a speed limit sign behind him, and he's holding a ball, and he's got his glove, big smile there. And in the webbing of the glove, I put a marijuana cigarette.
Whoops. And that got through?
Well, they didn't see it.
Oh.
And Ross hadn't seen it. And years later, I pointed it out to him. He thought that was just the greatest thing.
Is there one, I mean, authors say, the books are like children, they can't pick a favorite. But do you have a favorite player to draw because of the appearance of the player?
Bill Lee.
Billy.
Well, also there's so much character there, and when he was here, I got to know him quite well because we were both considered to be kind of outrageous characters. I'm not anymore. I quit drinking and all the other stuff that goes with it quite a number of years ago. But back then, I was very much of a rascal, and we would get
Mhm.
together and have hell of a good time. So drawing a caricature is more for me than just drawing a funny face. I like the accoutrements that go with it. I like additions. For example, Bill was out jogging once and he claimed he got attacked by an angry cat. So I had the cat attacking him with but the fact of the matter is he was attacked by an angry husband.
Whoops. Which is not the kind of thing you want the kids to know about.
Well, his kids don't love him. It's all right. But he was just full of beans and so on, and others pretty straightforward. But I'm always looking for that. Larry Parrish, for example, great third baseman we had. We traded him to Texas for Oliver. And I sometimes wonder, Oliver was great too, but if that was a mistake, because he was such a great team player in the dressing room. He
Mhm.
he solidified the blacks and the whites in the dressing room, which is sometimes rare in a ball team. But he when he swung, and he had a hell of a swing, he would his helmet would always fall off. So I simply drew him with a helmet with a chin strap to hold it on. Now, real ball fans would know that who watch him all the time. So putting little things, Jerry White, the greatest utility player we had. Uh, Sports Illustrated once called him the best fourth outfielder in baseball because he was behind Bellis Valentine and Andre Dawson and Warren Cromartie.
Mhm.
But he was just a great guy who Fanning would use in key situations. And so I drew him holding a spark plug, not a baseball bat. So it's little things like that I love to put in these cartoons, these caricatures that reflect on the individual. And
Now,
people are always looking for details in the cartoon as a result of that.
you talk about meeting deadlines. So, how long does one of these things take you? I see in the book you have like a series of progressions, drafts, if you will. So, how long
Mhm.
does it take you from start to finish to come up with something like this?
Again, my answer is when do you need it?
Right.
But ordinarily, I would say I give every drawing 4 to 5 hours,
Hmm. That
and
doesn't
that's
seem like a whole lot of time.
yep, yep. Just rough sketches and and then I do a pencil. I do a pencil shading, of the face, whatever it happens to be, making sure it's right, that the sun or whatever is coming from the same angle. That's in pencil. Then I crosshatch the shading and then erase the pencil.
Hmm.
And so that's why you get that wonderful old fashioned kind of effect in the drawing. And
Have
then color it. Nowadays,
Right.
I take the black and white
Mhm.
and scan it into the computer and color it on the computer because it's so much easier.
Let's talk a minute about how the technology has changed, because certainly when you started, there was no computer graphics. You were able to incorporate that in your work then?
When I first started, that's how it started because you couldn't get grays in the newspaper in the early 60s. It was all a sort of a dot printing kind of process.
Mhm.
So the only way to get the real shading was to do this cross hatching with gradation of the grays with the cross hatching. And so that's why I started that way because newspapers couldn't print wash or grays. Now, of course, they can beautifully. And so it's allowed me to apply all kinds of different processes with the advancement of technology, particularly with computers. And So I've had to move with the flow, but it's actually easier once you have in Photoshop or whatever it happens to be. Once you have it down, it becomes easier and you can speed up the process. There's
Sure.
also that wonderful undo.
I must save a lot of eraser work.
Yeah, well, it's anyway. So I've advanced with the technology. I've kept up with it. I understood the importance of it, but a lot of people didn't. And I know
Mhm.
people I went to art school retired because they couldn't work with and now you don't walk into an editor with a portfolio of drawings anymore. You email them a drawing or a sketch or that sort of thing. So it's all technical now.
I,
Not the drawing. I still draw, you know.
it's
Uh,
funny when you say that. It just made me think of back when movies started having sound, and some actors from the silent era couldn't either their voices wouldn't work, or they for whatever
yes.
reason they couldn't adapt.
Now, of course, there's artificial intelligence, and there's some wonderful work coming out of that. But that's for a younger generation to deal with. I mean, at my age, 82, uh, this is this is what I've evolved into, and this is what I'm going to stay for as long as I'm doing it.
Well, you've obviously adapted very well over the years. Uh, let's talk about your nom de plume. How did you pick that? And
The pen name Aislin. Years ago, I was working in going to art school in Quebec City, learning how to speak French, but also just having a pretty good time. And I started drawing caricatures of tourists in the street, speaking with a phony French accent. You like my painting, that sort of thing. Uh, and uh, and so that's kind of how I got started in that area. Really, just sitting in a corner, street corner, and drawing cartoons. I was doing that in 1965. But then it advanced very rapidly. Within 4 years, I was doing covers for Time magazine,
oh,
which of course was a very big deal back then.
sure.
Uh, so I came in. There's a lot of serendipity involved in my career, and that I came at things just in the right time. Uh, so back then, it just I advanced very quick. I went saw a few publications in New York and in Toronto and elsewhere, and suddenly I became kind of a hot item, if you will, and I was being printed everywhere and making a living at it. But just a couple of key things that happened allowed that to happen. As I say, key key situations, key people I met, people who gave me the push in the right direction. Very fortunate. They're only what 50 or 60 people in North America now who actually make a living at it.
Which is a shame. Uh, do you have any plans for another Expos book?
I have plans for next year will be the 50th anniversary of the Olympics happening here in Canada, in Montreal.
Wow.
And again, like the Expos, I have a ton of sketches I did back then. So the next book I'm putting together is a 50th anniversary sketchbook of the Olympics in Montreal with all kinds of sketches I did at the games back then and characters I drew. So that'll be the next little book.
Oh, looking forward to that. Well, Terry, it's been a pleasure. Again, folks, we've been talking with Terry Mosher, author of Aislin's Montreal Expos, a cartoonist's love affair. Terry, thanks so much for talking with us today, and
Could I add one thing?
you certainly can.
It's difficult to find the book beyond Canadian borders. If people want a copy of it, it's a very simple shop, SOHSHOP at Aislin.com. If you can order one there, and any Americans that are interested, because they're ex-Montrealers all over North America.
Oh,
So
sure.
okay,
Cool.
shop at Aislin.com.
And I will certainly put that in the text of the body.
Thank
Terry,
you.
thank you so much. Appreciate it, and best of luck to you, sir.
Okay, bye bye now.